Odell should be worried about his place in the NFL at this point?
I think he should. I think he should from a reputation standpoint. I don't believe it's his fault, but I believe that he was railroaded by the New York Giants, mainly Dave Gettleman. Their willingness to move him after signing him to a $95 million deal, talking about him the way that they did, making the noise about him the way that they did, for him to leave, to depart from the New York Giants and to end up in Cleveland, and for Cleveland to have some of the issues that they had. Again, I don't think it was his fault, but nevertheless, he's caught in the middle of it. We know what an electrifying talent Odell Beckham Jr. is. Unfortunately, what people wait for now, just as much as his heroics, is his temperament. What kind of temper tantrum is he going to put forth and what have you? And that emanates directly from his time with the New York Giants. You got Saquon Barkley there. Just imagine right now if Daniel Jones was your quarterback and he wasn't fumbling the damn football. But if he were your quarterback, along with Saquon Barkley running the football and Odell Beckham Jr. as one of your wideouts, I think one could look at the New York Giants and say, excuse me, they'd be considerably better off. But that's not the kind of discussion that we're having, because he's gone. And he's gone not because of his ability at all. It was because he didn't do things the Giants' way. And I think that we've all been smart enough to point that out about the New York Giants and how foolhardy they were in electing to let him go. But nevertheless, particularly with younger players that are temperamental, and especially when they're black, these kind of things never, ever, ever escape them. It is attached to them like Velcro. And unfortunately, with Odell Beckham Jr., that's what people talk about. So it's not just about his ability. It's about where he plays, what kind of leadership is in place, and how comfortable are they going to be with having him there. Unfortunately, that's what you have to think about because of how his name was sullied by Dave Gettleman and the New York Giants.
Well, I'm worried about Odell's place in the NFL, but not because exclusively or even maybe mostly of Gettleman and the Giants. Look, I've been worried about his place in history because I think he's the most talented guy ever, period, ever. That includes everybody at the position. So why shouldn't he be the best ever? Because he's not, right? So that's one thing. I'm worried about his place in history, but we're beyond that now, right? Yeah, he's got a lot of catching up to do. He's not 22, 23 and setting records anymore. I'm worried about his place in the NFL because even that position among the top three, like who are the top three receivers in football? That changes year to year. You know, back in the day, it was, Andre Johnson forever, and then all of a sudden, no, it's Calvin Johnson's, like, better, and that it changes, like, who's the best, or even the top three. It was Des Bryant and Antonio Brown and Julio Jones, and who's left standing from that? Only Julio Jones. Antonio Brown's out of the league. Des Bryant is looking for a job. Then it was Odell Beckham instead of Des Bryant. And where's Odell now? Is he top three usually? Do people mention him? It's Michael Thomas and it's DeAndre Hopkins. And, do people say Odell's name right now? So you want to look at the Giants, that's fine. They did him no favors. He had an old quarterback, no offensive line, no running game, and he didn't look good. But then it happened again with the Browns. And whatever else you want to say, what's the saying? Twice is coincidence, three times is pattern? He's on his way to pattern. He went from a guy, Odell, who was about 100 receptions a year for 1,400 yards and like a dozen touchdowns. That's what you'd expect from Odell. You know what he's done the last couple of years? It's 2 consecutive years, 2 different teams, 2 different situations, 1,000 yards, 75 receptions, half a dozen touchdowns. Does that sound like That sound like, an elite wideout? So, yes, I am worried about Odell's place in the NFL. He has no time to waste, and I can't just pin this on the Giants because that's twice now where he has underperformed in consecutive years. He needs to have a bounce-back season.
Odell shouldn't be worried about his place in the NFL because his talent is still there, and he's proved in this league that his talent is elite. What you just mentioned, Max, about what happened and transpired in New York with Eli obviously aging, a bad offensive line, and trying to figure out the direction of that program. What did he end up in last year with the Cleveland Browns? Was that not the same thing Was it not the Cleveland Browns that hired a coach that probably shouldn't have been the head coach? Was it not the Cleveland Browns that thought they had a budding star quarterback that digressed in his second year? Was it the Cleveland Browns that decided they needed to feature Nick Chubb more than they need to throw the ball downfield? All of these things transpired. We saw glimpses and flashes of Odell Beckham Jr. And by no means am I saying that he doesn't play a part in his perceived fall off in the NFL. But I guarantee you this. If Odell Beckham and the Cleveland Browns end up having a large amount of success, if the Cleveland Browns end up having a large amount of success, it'll be because Odell Beckham Jr. performed as one of the top 3 wide receivers in the league this year. That's how it's going to go. So I don't want to bash Odell Beckham Jr. based on the things that we talk about with the New York Giants and the Cleveland Browns, because neither one of those organizations at a certain point had the ability to put any player in a position to be successful. And the one player that was successful and kind of hid a lot of the glaring weaknesses for the New York Giants when they were still a bad football team was Odell Beckham Jr.
I'm not denying that. That's clear that if someone had to guess, like if you asked me to guess, what's the main contributing factor to the fact that he's fallen off? I would agree with you guys. But let's not pretend he hasn't fallen off. Like, that's the case. So when we're talking about his position in the NFL, part of that is branding, the way you think about a guy. And it's like an actor, right? A star actor in Hollywood.
Hold on.
They open a movie big. Now they're on top because the box office is big. You know why that is normally? It's not because that actor is so great. It's because they chose the right project, the right director, the right script.
Question.
And then they do that a couple times. Hold on. They do that a couple times. And you start to think, oh, every time that dude's in something, that lady's like, I want to go see that, right? They pick a bad script or two, that's over. Odell has worked with the wrong directors and the wrong script for 2 years in a row.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.